My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. I remember the other day speaking with a friend who happened to be asking for a solution to a problem he had with an application in his phone. And so as we were chatting, I decided to call him and explain the solution I wanted to offer for his problem. Suddenly I received a reply from him because he rejected the call and told me, please, don't call me during a Zoom meditation. I suddenly realized that I would have interrupted the wonderful moment he was having with our Lord in a meditation, probably. He's a priest friend of mine. He was preaching to some people. And then later we were talking and I asked him, well, why didn't you use the feature the phones have called the Do Not Disturb? This feature that one can modify and restrict certain things and allow some exceptions. And he was saying, well, he actually does, but he didn't understand why the call went through. And it got me thinking, Lord, now that we are in your presence, whether you, Jesus, you apply any feature of Do Not Disturb, because the gospel narrative usually presents scenes with these words while Jesus was still speaking, while he was still speaking with the crowds. You're often with the crowd speaking, dialoguing with them as you do with us, as you're doing with us right now, Jesus. But it might be such a dumb question because back then, Jesus, there was no phone. But was there any way of restricting disturbances to your discourses, Jesus? We will see, for instance, in chapter 12 of the Gospel according to St. Matthew, which has been presented to us today as special reading for the Mass, for the commemoration of the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, St. Matthew, in verse 46, says, while he was still speaking to the people, while Jesus speaks to the crowd, perhaps the Do Not Disturb feature of our Lord would have been someone raising up a sign or something saying silence. But this time around we see someone interrupted you, Jesus, and pointed out to your mom and your brethren who were outside waiting for you, actually wanting to speak with you. In this moment, someone manages to disturb our Lord's discourse, Jesus' discourse, at least the flow of his words. And Jesus, you've let him. Why? Will you also let me? In this few minutes with you, Jesus, we can also be tempted on a day like today, 16th of July, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, to convert these few minutes, also 10 minutes with Mary, 10 minutes with your mother, being a special occasion for her, for us. And it seems that this is what this person tried to do, interrupting you, calling your attention. Hey, Jesus, your mother and your brethren are outside wanting to speak with you. St. Matthew doesn't exactly say this way in the parallel passages. You will also see that, it was reported directly, but St. Matthew just reports it in the third person. Behold, his mother and his brethren stood outside asking to speak to him. But he replied, and Jesus is something peculiar also we can learn from you. And we can ask ourselves in your presence, what do I do with disturbances? What do I do when I'm interrupted in prayer? What do I do when I'm interrupted, for instance, in work? And you teach us, Jesus, what did you do? At this moment, you decide to turn this disturbance around, this interruption, you decide to turn it around. And you replied, who is my mother and who are my brethren? hey, Jesus, your mother and your brethren are outside itching to speak with you. Who is my mother and who is my brethren? And this is what you do, Jesus, turning it around. And then, there you go. Here, you say, here are my brother, here are my mother and my brethren. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Like saying, these are my mother and my brethren. Or you could also say in another way, I will show you who are my mother and my brethren. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Perhaps we are familiar with this passage, but Jesus gives us an opportunity today to reflect a bit on who truly is your mother. The Blessed Virgin Mary, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, was this person who tried to distract you, to disturb your discourse, your conversation with the people. Was he trying to get you to lay exclusive claim to your mother? Of course, by blood. Perhaps in his small mind, he tried to do this, but you try to raise it to the supernatural value, dimension. Behold, here are my mother and my brethren. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Jesus, if you let us, we can consider it in this other way. Here, my mother and my brethren, whoever does not disturb my Father's will, do not disturb. Whoever does not disturb my Father's will. This fellow who disturbed you, Lord, or perhaps was not attentive, was trying to draw attention, excessive attention, perhaps to himself, as if you didn't know that your mom was there. But Jesus, and this is one thing peculiar about the Blessed Virgin Mary, being always in the background. When we celebrate feasts like Our Lady, Feast of Our Lady, what do we try to do? We try to draw from her. We try to look at you and see how you point out to her. Our Lady was outside, St. Matthew tells us, with your brethren. But did it mean that she wasn't listening to you? Probably she was there to also accompany you. And when we look at Our Lady, when we stick to her, we find you. Here are my mother and my brethren. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. The feast of today, Our Lady of Mount Carmel, has become traditional in the church because it dates back to what occurred, especially with the monks of the Mount of Carmel, where Elijah himself, remember in 1 Kings number 19, when he assembled the Israelites and the 400 prophets of Baal and then challenged them and eventually got Israel to profess the true faith in the living God, the God who answers by fire. And then some monks in the 12th century decided to restore and not to lose the value of this special place of purification of the faith of Israel. And then they decided to dedicate themselves to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And then also tradition holds it that Saint Simon Stock, who was once a prior of this order of hermits, got a vision, was visited by Our Lady and given this sign. This is the scapula, saying anyone by this sign, this will be for anyone who wears the privilege. And then, from then onwards, the devotion to the scapular spread. In fact, I learned that many kings in England wore the scapular, but it was modified from being the habit of the hermits. It was modified also to the smaller scapular that someone could wear under his cloak, under his garment. And many kings of England, Edward II, Henry, Duke of Lancaster, and many others, they secretly wore the scapular under their clothing and died with it on, because Our Lady had promised that this shall be the privilege for you and for all the Carmelites, that anyone dying in this habit shall be saved. And so the tradition or the devotion to the scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel had lasted for centuries, and the church still treasures it, and it has been commended a lot by the church. I met a friend the other day who was putting on the scapular, and I asked him, why are you putting on the scapular? And he said, for protection. And then next he added, for the Marian privilege, which, and he tried to recall that the Saturday after the death, passing away of one, Our Lady has promised to rescue the person from purgatory in case the person was being trapped there. And so the scapular, which we wear under our clothing, which the church has treasured, in fact, on a day like today, 16th of July, there's a modern saint who had been recently beatified, Blessed Guadalupe. She also had strong devotion to Our Lady of the Scapular, also having learned it from Saint Jose Maria, who also promoted the scapular of the Blessed Virgin Mary. But we wear the scapular identifying ourselves as belongings of Our Lady, part of the family of Our Lady. She herself has given this cloak in Nigeria. It's typical that on big ceremonies, occasions, weddings, burials, families try to sew a special attire, and they try to make sure that is singular, that no other family had used that attire, that design of that attire in any other occasion, and they try their best in order to be singled out. Our Lady guaranteed this privilege, guaranteed our protection to anyone who wears the scapular. A day like today is a day we turn to Our Lady once more, going to her, to learn from her. She was in the background in this gospel scene, in this moment of the gospel, as St. Matthew tells us. Someone points out to her. Our Lord, without getting distracted, tries to encourage all of us to imitate Our Lady. This is the way the church has understood this text. That rather than demoting, rather than despising Our Lady, who was there waiting, who was there itching to speak with our Lord, that our Lord was actually encouraging us to imitate her, who has listened. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Wearing the scapular is not just enough to hold on to the privilege, but also to imitate Our Lady, because we belong to her, and to do the will of our Father who is in heaven. Do not disturb the will of my Father in heaven. Whoever does not disturb the will of my Father in heaven, he is my mother and brother and sister. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations which you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.